Live from Chicago, this is NewsNation. Your news, your nation.
Our top story tonight, President Trump is in the hospital currently at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland.
Within the past hour, a source familiar with the president's condition told NewsNation that he has a fever and is experiencing shortness of breath. He arrived at the hospital shortly before 7 o'clock Eastern time. The White House says he will work in a special presidential suite for the next few days. The press secretary said the president is in good spirits. The president thanked the American people in a video before he left. Here it is.
I want to thank everybody for the tremendous support. I'm going to Walter Reed Hospital. I think I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out. The First Lady is doing very well. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will never forget it. Thank you.
The Cleveland Clinic now confirms at least 11 people who were at the first presidential debate earlier this week tested positive for coronavirus.
The clinic says those people who tested positive never went into the debate hall. They were either members of the media or they were working to set up ahead of Tuesday's event.
Ashley Ketz has more now from our newsroom.
Well, the debate commission says the upcoming vice presidential and presidential debates will go on as planned. However, they are increasing the distance between candidates from 7 to 12 feet. At this time, the vice president and Kamala Harris are expected to debate in Utah on Tuesday, and the second presidential debate is scheduled for October 15th. The last debate will happen October 22nd. There's no word yet on any additional changes happening to those debates. The Cleveland Clinic did release a statement about those new precautions. As health advisor to the commission on presidential debates and the host site, we had several requirements to maintain a safe environment that align with CDC guidelines, including temperature checks, hand sanitizing, social distancing, and masking. Individuals traveling with both candidates, including the candidates themselves, have been tested and tested negative by their respective campaigns. Based on what we know about the virus and the safety measures we had in place, we believe there is low risk of exposure to our guests. Out of an abundance of caution, we're reaching out to our guests to address any questions and concerns, as well as offering testing. We will continue to monitor the information being released by the White House. And among the lawmakers reacting on social media to the president's coronavirus diagnosis is Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Graham wished the president and First Lady well and also said, quote, "After being informed of his positive test and out of an abundance of caution, I was tested for COVID-19 in South Carolina. I was informed I was negative." Graham also separately tweeted, quote, "I feel fine and look forward to the hearing for Judge Amy Coney Barrett on October 12th. Any senator who wants to participate virtually will be allowed to do so." Now, earlier in the day, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has said he will push forward with Barrett's nomination hearings. Rob.
All right, Ashley, thank you very much. And a down day, as you might expect, on Wall Street after news of the president's diagnosis. The three major indices plunged in early trading, making up some losses, though, before finishing the day in the red. The president's positive test, just one factor creating volatility in the markets right now. There is an overheated tech sector, a new jobs report, and looming over it all, questions about a possible new stimulus bill and help for the airline industry. NewsNation's Tom Negevin live for us on Wall Street tonight with more. Tom.
Certainly the primary factor there, Rob, the president's diagnosis, leading to a tumultuous day in the markets today and the likelihood of more to come. The major markets fell as investors weighed several important economic developments today, not just the president's positive COVID test, but a weaker than expected employment report and the prospect of more stimulus money from Washington.
Obviously, we had a great jobs report.
White House staffers offering their take on the numbers, raising eyebrows as they did, briefing reporters without masks, choosing instead to maintain social distance.
Today's numbers are actually, I think, better than some are portraying it, because you had a couple 100,000 glitch in the government section, which was really public schools that didn't reopen.
It's the last jobs report before the November election. Non-farm payrolls are up 661,000, lower than the 800,000 Dow Jones estimate, but the unemployment rate beat estimates at 7.9%.
The economy continues to be robust in its V-shaped recovery.
Still, the number that may be getting overlooked is permanent job losses. They're up 345,000 to 3.8 million, a 2.5 million increase since before the pandemic, and a bad sign for the long haul.
The pace of these gains has slowed, and it's really pointing towards a protracted period of fragile recovery that could be further imperiled if infection rates worsen.
In the end, all three major indexes racked up gains for the week, if not for the day, certainly not for the day. What really matters now, economists tell us, is the way we manage this pandemic and the infection rate of COVID-19. Live in Manhattan, Tom Negevin, NewsNation.
Tom, thank you. Earlier tonight, we spoke with Dr. Barbara Perry, the Director of Presidential Studies at the University of Virginia, on today's developments in the White House and also the timing as we approach the November election. She recalled former President Richard Nixon falling ill before an election.
I would compare it historically to Richard Nixon in 1960. People might be familiar with the first debate from the four that he did with John F. Kennedy and the fact that Nixon looked so ill, and it was because he was. And that was at the end of September, but not too different from the time to the election. He had had a terrible wound on his leg. I think a car door had hit it, and it didn't seem to be too serious, but it was painful, but it got infected. So he was hospitalized just before the debate for a week or two and lost 15 pounds. So he looked terrible at the debate. He also came down with the flu. So he didn't have anything that was fatal. He didn't have a fatal diagnosis, but he had two situations, two infections, hospitalized, looked terrible, was sweating profusely in the first debate, and didn't have his best performance.
And Barbara Perry will join us once again in our next hour of News Nation to talk about the significance of the president's diagnosis in presidential history. The U.S. does continue to lead the world in both cases and deaths. According to Johns Hopkins University, there have been more than 7.3 million COVID-19 cases in the U.S. since the pandemic began, and more than 208,000 deaths from the virus.
And let's take a look now at how exactly the virus spread. According to the CDC, the virus began in Wuhan, China in December of 2019. The virus made its way here to the U.S. by January 2020. The CDC confirmed the first case on January 21st. It was a man in his 30s from Washington State. He had traveled to Wuhan and returned before showing any symptoms. By March 13th, President Trump had declared a national emergency, and he made $50 billion in federal money available to fight the virus. According to Johns Hopkins University, by April, more than 1 million people all around the world had been diagnosed with COVID-19. Testing at that point was very limited. Health officials feared that the number of infected was actually a whole lot higher. On May 27th, the U.S. reached 100,000 COVID-19 deaths, the first country in the world to reach that number. The virus at this point already taking the lives of more Americans than the Korean and Vietnam Wars combined. By early July, the Trump administration announced the withdrawal of the U.S. from the World Health Organization, citing his disapproval of the group's response to the pandemic and accusing it of bowing to Chinese influence. The withdrawal does not officially take effect until next year. And on September 22nd, the U.S. death toll from the virus officially topped 200,000, the highest death toll of any country in the world, and a number roughly equal to the population of Salt Lake City or Huntsville, Alabama. At the time, President Trump called the news a shame, but argued the death toll could have been a whole lot worse without shutdowns across the country.
Thank you, Rob. Next on News Nation, a check of today's other top headlines. Raging wildfires continue to affect vineyards in California. And we're going to be talking live with one owner who helped firefighters try and control those blazes. And here's Albert.
Yeah, and those fire weather concerns linger into the first half of the weekend. Fire weather warnings posted for coastal areas of central and southern California through tomorrow. We'll talk about that and show you the latest numbers with these ongoing fires coming up.
All human way to health care. I'm Felicia Bolton. Go to newsnationnow.com for 24/7 breaking news and weather.
Turning now to one of today's other top headlines, wildfires continue to rage throughout the West Coast, burning millions of acres, and those winds have been growing stronger in California's wine country, and that is threatening to spread more damaging flames.
The Glass Fire has now burned more than 60,000 acres. Cal Fire officials say it's just 6% contained. At least 2,000 firefighters are battling the Glass Fire in Napa and Sonoma counties. That blaze has already destroyed nearly 600 buildings.
NewsNation correspondent Nancy Liu joining us live now from St. Helena in Napa County. Nancy.
And Rob, the Glass Fire wiped out multiple buildings here at Spring Mountain Vineyard, though a lot of the plants and a historic mansion survived thanks to the vineyard manager. He saved them while his own home burned to the ground.
We have a lot of history on the property. Our owner bought 4 separate parcels, and they're all historic.
Ron Rosenbrand has been managing Spring Mountain Vineyards for nearly 20 years. Today, the historic winery building, 95% of the vines and the property's signature mansion are all intact. While the Glass Fire ravaged 7 buildings on the property Sunday night, Rosenbrand risked his life by rushing here to point out historical structures to multiple out-of-town crews.
And it was blazing. I mean, the wind gusts that night, they said, were between 50 and 60 miles an hour. The embers were blowing everywhere like a thunderstorm of rain, you know, but it was all fire.
The flames came within 15 feet of the mansion, which dates back to the 1880s and was featured in the 1980s TV series Falcon Crest. It was saved by a strike team with crews from several cities, including Burbank and San Luis Obispo. They were back today to check for any hotspots.
We are very thankful for what you guys did, man. You guys are awesome.
Team members say they wouldn't have known about the historical structures if not for Rosenbrand's insistence that they save them.
We didn't realize the significance of the mansion, of being there. And actually, it's very tucked away. If you don't get on the property, and actually you don't see it at all.
While Rosenbrand was trying to save the winery, no one was looking out for his home just half a mile away.
Our home burned to the ground, and there's nothing left. But you know, my family got out safely, and everybody's healthy and strong, so I'm thankful. You can see how dusty these are.
Rosenbrand says this year's harvest is lost due to smoke damage, but the vines should be back next year when Spring Mountain hopes to welcome visitors again. It's possible due to a stubborn firefight on multiple levels.
I thought, you know, I'm going to do everything I can to help save this place if there's any way I can do that.
It's just a great area that people love to visit, and to maintain that for, you know, everybody to come in from all over the world it means a lot to us to be able to help out.
And as you've heard, the Glass Fire continues to burn in Sonoma and Napa counties, and this area remains under a red flag warning. That means gusty winds could still blow burning embers in to ignite new fires, so no one is in the clear yet. We're live in St. Helena. Nancy Liu, NewsNation.
Nancy, thank you so much. Time to get a little check of the forecast with Albert. And here we are in October. What a slow start to the month. Obviously, massive political news. And then on top of that, the storm season that never seems to let up on the gas.
Storms and, of course, the ongoing fires out west, and the smoke you just saw from Nancy's live shot impacting the crop there. And this is a look at the smoke concentration out west. The darker the gray, the thicker the smoke. And notice you have the thickest smoke right here in the San Joaquin Valley from these fires. But we're also watching fires in the Rockies. South central Wyoming is the Mullen Fire. And this evening, that fire now up to 127,000 acres with a northwest wind. There's smoke associated with that fire moving into Denver, moving into the Southern Plains, even moving into portions of the Gulf Coast. What a fire season in California alone. Nearly 4 million acres have burned just since the beginning of the year. And October through the spring months is kind of the heart of fire season. This is when you get the weather patterns that set up with high pressure out here towards the east, low pressure offshore, and you get these Santa Ana wind events. And at times in these Santa Ana wind events, you can see wind gusts in these canyons and passes 60, 70 miles per hour. Thankfully, that's not in the forecast, but there are winds that could accelerate to 30 miles per hour as we roll through tomorrow, just north and south of the Bay Area. These are fire weather warnings or red flag warnings that have been posted. So the highest concentration, we believe, of wind gusts, at least for the first half of the weekend, is mainly going to be in coastal areas. And the next opportunity for rain, at least for Northern California, where we have a lot of these active fires, occurs in about 8 days. So we're excited to report that to you. August complex fire, largest wildfire in California history at 51% containment tonight at over 970,000 acres. As Joe mentioned, the glass fire now over 60,000 acres. Only 6% though containment. Zog fire at over 56,000 acres and now at about 56% containment. And also keeping an eye on the ongoing Creek fire and the SQF complex fire out here towards the central portions of California. So ongoing heat, ongoing dry weather, at least for the next week out west, and some changes in about 8 days. The rest of the country dealing with cool temperatures, below average temperatures, with high temperatures only in the 50s over portions of the Midwest, and a cold night for portions of the Midwest. That's why we have frost advisories and even some freeze warnings, northern sections of Michigan for tonight. And temperatures tomorrow morning will be in the 30s and 40s, and then rebounding, still below average in many spots, into the 60s in some spots. Staying in the 50s, though, in Detroit, staying in the 40s again. Green Bay, you were in the 40s today. You're back in the upper 40s for tomorrow. We'll keep an eye on this and preview more of the weather coming up a little later in the newscast. Joe?
Sounds good. Thanks, Albert. Signs of potential progress on Capitol Hill when it comes to a deal on coronavirus relief. We'll look at how much of a stimulus check you could receive.
Again.
Hours of grand jury proceedings have been made public in the case of Breonna Taylor, who was shot and killed by Louisville police. A court ruled that a rare release of those recordings. The jury brought no criminal charges against the officers for her death, sparking protests around the nation.
Today, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said she and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin are coming to terms on a second coronavirus relief package that is bipartisan and will include another round of direct relief to most Americans. That relief is likely to come in the form of a second $1,200 check or direct deposit if, still a big if, the deal indeed comes to fruition.
And the House Speaker also asked airlines to delay today's planned layoffs and furloughs. Pelosi said the House will pass a standalone House bill, if needed, to provide urgent relief to tens of thousands of airline workers whose jobs are on the cutting block.
And of course, we're staying on top of the latest developments with President Trump's hospital stay after, of course, he tested positive for COVID-19. All the latest in a series of live reports starting at the top of the hour.
In the meantime, we now know 2 more players on the Tennessee Titans have tested positive for COVID-19.
Team originally had a game scheduled against the Pittsburgh Steelers this weekend, but that's since been postponed until later in the season now. NewsNation reporter Kayla Anderson explains what the team's doing now.
I'm Kayla Anderson in Nashville. The Tennessee Titans announced that 2 more players have tested positive for COVID-19, bringing that total to 13. 7 players and 6 staff members are now in quarantine. Meanwhile, the NFL announced today that the Titans-Steelers game that was supposed to happen this Sunday at Nissan Stadium has been moved to October 25th. Stadium capacity will be at 15%. Now, as for head coach Mike Vrabel's team, he is now focused on the players' health and safety and supporting one another.
You have a personal side to you that you want to make sure that those people that are indeed infected are safe and that they're healing, but also understand that the severity of it, and that we'll probably have different protocols that we'll have to follow. I understand that when we go back into the building, and we'll do exactly what the league asks us to do for the safety of the players and their families and our staff and their families.
The Titans will continue to test through Monday, and they hope to get the team back in the building sometime early this next week. Kayla Anderson, NewsNation, Nashville.
And we will continue to follow the latest developments on the president's health tonight. And we're also going to be talking live with a former White House aide to George H.W. Bush about what it's like for those who work in the White House during these conditions. Stay with us.
For most of the day, it was business as usual for President Trump at the White House during the first full day of quarantine following his positive COVID-19 test.
He's had mild symptoms, but he is hard at work. We're having to slow him down a little bit. He's been on the phone.
But on the advice of his doctors, he was flown to Walter Reed Medical Center, where he will remain for observation.
I think I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out.
Lawmakers, voters, and political opponent Joe Biden reacting to the president's diagnosis.
My wife Jill and I pray that they'll make a quick and full recovery. This is not a matter of politics. It's a bracing reminder to all of us that we have to take this virus seriously.
How this drama will impact the campaigns with just 32 days left until the November election.
Covering the stories that matter to you from across America. Live in primetime. This is News Nation. Your news, your nation.
And thanks for joining us on this very busy Friday night. I'm Rob Nelson.
I'm Marnie Hughes.
And I'm Joe Donlin. We are monitoring breaking news tonight.
President Trump does have coronavirus, and today the president was flown to Walter Reed Medical Center as a precaution. His officials say the White House says he'll spend a few days there working from the presidential suite. The president walked out of the White House on his own. He boarded Marine One for the short flight to the hospital, and shortly before leaving, he did record a video later posted on Twitter. He reassured the country he is feeling well and says that he and Melania is doing well, that he himself is doing well, and hopes to get through this. Minutes later, the president did arrive at the medical center. We're going to actually show you that video that he posted right now.
I want to thank everybody for the tremendous support. I'm going to Walter Reed Hospital. I think I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out. The First Lady is doing very well. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will never forget it. Thank you.
That video posted literally just minutes before he boarded Marine One. Then again, short helicopter ride. He arrived at the medical center where he was driven from the tarmac to the facility where he will stay again for the next few days. Not an exact timeline just yet. All of that's according to a statement from the White House. As you can imagine, this has been a fast-moving story that has developed a lot since the president revealed he was awaiting test results after a close aide, Hope Hicks, tested positive, which we reported to you about this time just last night. So much has happened in those hours since. As far as the country as a whole, here are the latest figures from Johns Hopkins University. The U.S. has more than 7.3 million confirmed COVID-19 cases, now including the president. More than 208,000 Americans have died.
President Trump's past several days were travel-packed with campaign stops and many public events. On Monday, the president met with a truck manufacturer outside the White House on the South Lawn, and he appeared in the White House Rose Garden providing updates about the nation's coronavirus test kits. On Tuesday, the president traveled to Cleveland ahead of that night's presidential debate with Democratic nominee Joe Biden. White House aide Hope Hicks was with the president at the debate and that group in Cleveland. President Trump flew back to Washington later that night, landing after midnight at the White House. Then Wednesday, he traveled to Minnesota for both a fundraiser and an outdoor rally in Duluth. White House aide Hope Hicks accompanied the president on that trip, and the next day, she tested positive for the virus. The president traveled to another fundraiser in New Jersey, this one private, returning that night to the White House. And on Fox News, the president announced that both he and the First Lady were being tested for the virus. And then today, President Trump tweeted that both he and the First Lady tested positive for coronavirus.
Since the President and First Lady's positive test, health authorities launched an expansive program to test a wide range of White House officials and other people who've come into close contact with the President in recent weeks. In addition to President Trump and the First Lady, senior White House advisor Hope Hicks, Republican National Committee Chair Rona McDaniel, and Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee also tested positive for coronavirus. Among the administration officials to test negative, Vice President Mike Pence and Second Lady Karen Pence, the president's daughter Ivanka, and son-in-law Jared Kushner, and Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett, who confirmed she actually did test positive for COVID-19 earlier this year, but has since recovered. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, along with Vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris, all tested negative as well.
We want to get back to NewsNation correspondent Joe Khalil, who is live outside Walter Reed Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland for us tonight, where the president is being treated. Joe, I want to start with the fact that we have known about this news for several hours, and we have yet to hear anyone from the White House get in front of a microphone or any of the doctors treating the president to update the American public. It is now 10:05 there on the East Coast.
Unfortunately, that's what we're hearing as well, Marnie, is that there's not going to be an update, at least anytime soon, from the White House. And we asked specifically if we would get any update from either the White House or from the doctors and the media team here at Walter Reed. They told us that the White House is going to be handling this. But again, I just checked with my White House source, and he said don't expect anything anytime soon. So that's where we are here. I can tell you that as the president is getting care at Walter Reed behind me, there seems to be a pretty concerted effort by the White House and the president really to show that it's business as usual, whether he's at the White House or whether he's here at the hospital. I just got an email not too long ago from the press secretary's office, and I thought it might be an update on the condition of the president. So we were excited, eager to see, what that update was. It was instead, in fact, on the president's economic package, Made in the USA, Buy American, Hire American campaign. So that happened. We know the president also signed a number of disaster declarations today. So again, pretty clear that there is an effort to just show that while the president is here at the hospital, he is still working in his capacity as Commander-in-Chief of the United States, and that hasn't changed. In fact, we do know that at the hospital there are offices that are set up specifically for presidents to be working while they're here. So we know that is happening. We know the president is in good hands here. The doctors here are world-renowned at Walter Reed Medical Center. We know, by the way, that, as you said, we haven't gotten an update, unfortunately. So that's what we're hearing from the White House now. We know that there are no public events that are scheduled for the president for tomorrow. Not a surprise there. We're waiting to hear either from them, or we could hear from the president himself. I think it's telling that we haven't seen the president send out a tweet since that video message before he got on Marine One. Oftentimes when we hear from the White House, it is directly from the president's Twitter feed. That has not happened, so that's where we're going to be keeping an eye tonight, along with the White House, if there's anything else that we can find out. It may just be that they're not going to say anything, guys, and that we may have to wait until tomorrow. We know the president is expected to be here for at least a couple of days, as the White House says, out of an abundance of caution. We're hoping that those symptoms, the last update we got was that they were mild. We hope they stay mild and that they don't get any worse and any more serious, guys, as the president receives care here at Walter Reed Medical Center.
Joe, thank you very much. We are joined now by Michael Bush, former White House aide and Assistant Press Secretary to George H.W. Bush. No relation, by the way. He joins us to talk about the developments with the president. Michael, the last time we talked earlier this afternoon, you said you would be looking for overt, accurate, timely information. We haven't had any of that yet. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised, to be honest with you. Hopefully they'll have some sort of statement this evening, ideally from the president's physician or some sort of credible, trusted source to provide an update. He's arrived at Walter Reed. I think it would be helpful to know what's going on and what the plan is. I'm not surprised that maybe there's not a full-blown press conference, but you would think that they would release some sort of statement. Maybe they will. They haven't, advertised that they would be doing so in the past. So maybe we'll still get something tonight. But I'm kind of surprised that they haven't already identified who would be that credible voice in the administration, or voices. You know, it clearly should be somebody with a medical background. The president's position is a natural choice, along with someone else in the administration, maybe from a chief of staff or someone of that level that can talk about continuity of government.
Well, we did ask the doctor about that, Michael. I'm curious what you would say as a former assistant press secretary. Is no news good news, or the longer we go without hearing anything, is that cause for concern?
I don't think it's either at this point. I think that they are trying to get their ducks in a row and get the message and who's going to convey that and how and when. The difficulty is that they're not in control of the message. The virus is in control of what's going on in a rapidly unfolding situation. And so all they can do is react and try to control what they can, which makes it particularly difficult, unlike other medical situations. So I wouldn't read too much into it that because they're not talking that things have deteriorated. At the same time, you would think that they would at least be advertising, maybe off the record, on what their plans would be. Perhaps they are, and we're just not aware of it yet, or I'm not, but you know, we certainly haven't seen anything yet.
Have you seen the president's video? Between the last time we talked, he released that. Have you seen it?
I have. You know, when we talked about that, you know, a couple hours ago, we were thinking that there would be some sort of statement or what he would do. You know, I thought it was interesting that they just had a tight travel pool, very limited number of people on the South Lawn photographing him when he came out, so no one shouting any questions, and then he had that statement, which didn't get released until after he had left the South Lawn. So, you know, it was brief. I thought he was pretty solemn and serious. You know, we've had 7.3 million people infected by this, and it's scary. And the virus is in control of it. You're not. And so I'm sure he's feeling that on a personal level as well.
Talk a little bit about the continuity of government and what's happening behind the scenes right now.
Yeah, I'm sure there's contingency plans upon contingency plans, and there are people employed by the administration who specifically work on these types of things. So, you know, everybody knows their role, and assuming that the people who have that responsibility aren't also getting sick, they are putting into action what they need to do to make sure that the president has everything at his disposal to do what he needs to do while he's at Walter Reed. You know, the office of the presidency travels wherever President Trump goes. So the military aid is there with the football, the nuclear codes. Obviously, the medical team is there, the Secret Service, White House communications. Everybody that he needs to carry out his responsibilities is there. And so he can navigate that from Walter Reed. There is a whole score of other staffers behind at the White House and other locations to make sure that they are able to plan for any next steps should the situation deteriorate. That is their responsibility.
Michael, we're up against the clock here in 10 seconds. Can you tell us what we should be looking for next?
Yeah, I'd be looking for a statement, hopefully, before the end of the evening, or even if it was just off the record to give some indication of when they may talk to the press. I wouldn't read too much to it that there isn't one. Based on some of the secrecy behind past releases, maybe that's not surprising. But I think that that's something that would be a welcome news by America and, in fact, the world to have a little bit more clarity.
All right. Michael Bush, thank you for your time and your insight. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Meanwhile, the president and Joe Biden are still in the midst of a campaign, of course, now affected by the virus. The president canceled his scheduled events tonight and tomorrow, obviously, but the Biden-Harris campaign moved ahead today as the candidates wish the president well. Biden was in Michigan, Harris in Nevada. NewsNation's political correspondent Dean Reynolds has today's developments. Dean.
Marnie, the White House describes the president's symptoms as mild, a low fever, congestion, and a cough. And a source tells us his condition also includes shortness of breath. But when the President of the United States goes to the hospital, whether out of an abundance of caution or not, it's a big story.
President Trump sought to reassure the country tonight with a brief statement before leaving the White House.
I want to thank everybody for the tremendous support. I'm going to Walter Reed Hospital. I think I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out. The First Lady is doing very well. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will never forget it. Thank you.
But there is very little information about how serious his condition is and why medical attention at the White House was possibly inadequate to treat him. In addition, a huge unanswered question involves who else in the White House compound or in the traveling presidential entourage may be infected and contagious, despite frequent tests being administered. The First Lady tested positive along with the President last night. Their test followed word that a top Trump aide, Hope Hicks, had not only tested positive, but was feeling sick on Wednesday, the day she accompanied the President to a rally in Duluth, Minnesota. And today came word that at least 3 people who attended the White House Rose Garden nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett for the Supreme Court last Saturday are now infected with the virus. Republican Senators Mike Lee of Utah and Tom Tillis of North Carolina, as well as Father John Jenkins, the president of the University of Notre Dame, where Coney Barrett was a law professor, have all tested positive. The judge herself has tested negative. Vice President Pence and Second Lady Karen Pence were tested too, and their results were negative as well. Pence will chair a conference call meeting of the administration's coronavirus task force tomorrow, and he is due to debate Democratic vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris on Tuesday night. That event is still on. And former Vice President Joe Biden and his wife Jill were also tested and found to be negative for the virus. So Mr. Biden ventured out onto the campaign trail today in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he referred to the day's developments.
The news is a reminder that we as a nation need to do better in dealing with this pandemic. I hope that all those who are fighting this virus, including the First Family and so many Americans today, recover and recover soon. My prayers are with the families of the more than 207,000 Americans who've died from this virus. Many of them got up this morning at the breakfast table with an empty chair of someone they lost and they loved. We understand. And there's more than 7 million Americans who are now infected, have been infected.
Now, of course, being confined to the hospital for several days and possibly days more recuperating at the White House means the president is losing precious time to contest the election, which will be held in just over a month. The virus that has been the dominant issue this year is now a very real threat to his hopes for a second term. Rob?
Dean, thank you very much. And joining us now to talk about COVID-19 symptoms after the President and First Lady, of course, tested positive is Dr. James Baker. He's a professor of allergy and immunology at the University of Michigan Medical School. Dr. Baker was also a member of the Council of Advisors for the Office of Science and Technology Policy during the Obama and Bush administrations. Dr. Baker, thanks so much for joining us. You've been with us for hours now. We certainly appreciate your time and your expertise and your insights, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just talk a little bit, as much as you can, about the treatment that the president is likely undergoing right now at Walter Reed, what you would normally expect it to be, not only the treatment at the hospital, but the treatment that he had at the White House before deciding to be taken to the hospital.
Yes, one of the things we've learned about COVID since the spring when we had all the illnesses is that you want to treat individuals before they get sick, before they develop pneumonia. So I think they've been very aggressive in treating the president. The first therapy he got today is actually an experimental therapy, one that doesn't yet have approval. And that involves 2 antibodies. And these are proteins that were specifically made to bind and neutralize the virus and clear it from the body. And there is some experimental data that suggests that it's helpful and it allows people to recover quicker and with less injury. Once he gets to the hospital, I think he'll be eligible for a number of other therapies that have been shown to have benefit. One is remdesivir, which is an antiviral drug that's been developed by Gilead. This drug has been shown to shorten hospitalizations and not yet improve death rates in this disease, but does appear to be a very effective drug in treating people. And then finally, steroids, which are an old drug, but appear to have good use here. They can reduce both the severity of the illness and mortality. So my guess is he'll be treated with all 3 of these approaches. He's already had one. And they'll do it rapidly so that they can nip this in the bud before it progresses.
And Doctor, we have some more breaking news on this already busy Friday. We've just gotten confirmation from Kellyanne Conway herself. She too has now tested positive for COVID-19. She too was at that Saturday event last weekend where the president was announcing his Supreme Court nomination. I think that makes her at least the fourth person now to test positive who was at that event on Saturday. In that context, can you talk about, just again reiterate to people how contagious this is and what steps we should all take to protect ourselves, because it seems like we are a very long way from being done with this pandemic, or this pandemic being done with us.
Yes. Any type of group event is ground zero for the coronavirus. It's spread by aerosol, by people talking, giving speeches, singing. Anything like that is really a red flag. But most importantly, you have to wear the mask all the time, even when you don't think you're going to be exposed, because those are the times that you can be exposed. You have to remember, most of the people that are sick with this disease don't have any symptoms, especially younger people, and they can spread the virus without even knowing it. So you need to be prepared. You need to be prophylactic, to wear that mask before you think you need it. Whenever you go out, whenever you're in a group event, you need to wear the mask.
Dr. Baker, you have been extraordinarily helpful to us all day since this news broke several hours ago. We'll keep you on standby for whatever may come in the next few days. But thank you so much, and enjoy what is left of your weekend, sir. We do appreciate it. Thanks for being on News Nation tonight.
And we can hope for the best for the president and the first lady.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, sir. We'll be right back with more continuing coverage after this.
13 minutes before CNN, 15 minutes before Fox News. News Nation broke the news to you first on the News Nation Now app. The President and First Lady test positive for COVID-19. Download the free News Nation Now app today and stay connected 24/7 for breaking news and weather.
I'm Greg. I'm 68 years old. I do motivational speaking.
All right, let's check back in with Albert one more time before we get to... Well, no, you actually are back for another one, aren't you? I'm trying to get you out for a weekend.
Yeah, Joe likes to rush the stores on Friday.
I'm okay with that. One and done?
Yeah, well, Albert likes to be in the parking lot by 10.
If it's 10:01, I'm running late. Let me show you what's going on out there. We do have a new tropical storm. This is Tropical Storm Gamma, developing earlier this evening in the northwestern Caribbean Sea. There's another tropical wave right behind it in the eastern Caribbean Sea. We'll talk about that one in a second. But let's zoom into Gamma getting stronger tonight. We're awaiting an update here in the next 20 to 30 minutes from the National Hurricane Center with this one. About 130 miles to the southeast of Cozumel, Mexico, moving towards the northwest at only about 9 miles per hour. Notice the thunderstorms really starting to blossom around the center of circulation, so a sign of strengthening headed into the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico this weekend. And the greatest threat initially will be rainfall, not so much in the way of wind or storm surge, but maybe as much as a foot of rainfall possible. And then it slows down late this weekend into Monday and even Tuesday north of the Yucatan before making its way westward as we head towards Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. Now, beyond this, there's a lot of question marks on exactly what happens with the system. Most of the forecast models tonight like that solution from the Hurricane Center, taking it off towards the west. But here's what's kind of playing a big factor on exactly where Tropical Storm Gamma goes, and does it have an impact in the United States? It's a frontal boundary that will be stalled out over the central Gulf of Mexico. That's initially slowing it down. That's why it stalls here late this weekend north of the Yucatan, takes that westward jog. But where does that front go? Is it weakened enough that this moves more to the north towards Texas, or even up towards the northeast into the central or eastern Gulf of Mexico? So we said it earlier this evening, everyone from Brownsville, Texas to Key West, let's keep an eye on this one, and we have plenty of time to do just that. Tropical wave here in the eastern Caribbean Sea, moving off towards the west-northwest, also has a chance of development, has a 40% chance, as a matter of fact, of becoming our next tropical depression, if not tropical storm. We went through the entire list. That's only happened once in history, back in 2005, and here we are now in the Greek alphabet with Gamma. Next one on the list is Delta. How far in this list did we get back in 2005? Made it to Epsilon. So there are some signs that we could even surpass that this year. Of course, we're keeping an eye on the tropics every night here on News Nation.
All right, Albert, thank you very much. News Nation's ongoing coverage of President Trump's coronavirus diagnosis continues tonight. After the break, we're speaking with a presidential historian about the significance of today's news. And remember, tonight and all weekend. For more information, you can always visit our website, newsnationnow.com, or download our free NewsNation Now app.
And tonight, as people across the country react to the president's diagnosis, we'll share some of the support the First family is receiving from his political allies and opponents.